Erev Tov and good evening, everyone. We are in Parsha's Ki Tavo and the Zera Shimshon. We're going to begin with Os Beis, section 2. And in the sefer, that is on page Shin Samech Dalid, at the bottom of the second column. This piece in the Zera Shimshon talks about the mitzvah of Bikurim, the first fruit, which is the subject that begins our Parsha of Ki Tavo. And I'm going to read the pasuk that the Zera Shimshon is going to analyze. Basically, in a nutshell, the mitzvah of Bikurim is a mitzvah that only applied once Bnei Yisrael entered the land of Israel and conquered and settled the land. And at that point, each year when the Shivat Haminim, when the fruit of the 7 species, for example, figs and dates and grapes and olives and pomegranates, when the first fruits begin to grow on people's trees, there was a mitzvah to mark them, to tie a little string or a ribbon around them, and then once a person had all of their first fruits from their different trees of the Shivat Haminim, there was a mitzvah to bring a basket of those fruits to the Beit HaMikdash, to the Mishkan, or later to the Beit HaMikdash, and to bring them there and present them to the Kohen. So listen to what the Torah says. This is Perek Chavav, Pasuk Gimel in Sefer Devarim, beginning of Parshas Ki Tavo. Uvasa el hakohen asher yiyeh bayamim hahem. And you should come to the Kohen who is in your days. Ve'amarta elav, and you should say to him, Higadati hayom lashem elokecha. I am telling today to Hashem, my God, ki vosi el haaretz asher nishba Hashem lavoseinu laseis lanu. That I have come into the land that Hashem swore to give to my forefathers to give to us. And then there's more that the person declares, but that's the beginning of the process, bringing the Bikurim, bringing the basket of fruits, presenting them to the Kohen. So the Zera Shimshon says as follows. Asher yiyeh bayamim hahem, that the Kohen that will be in those days, Pirish Rashi Zichrono Livracha. Rashi explains, why did the Torah add the seemingly extra words about the Kohen that he will be the one in your days? Why was that added? Ein lecha ela Kohen shebiyamecha kemos shehu. Rashi says, you can only bring the fruit to the Kohen who is in your days as he is. Which means that Rashi is telling us that the Torah is emphasizing that we should not yearn for or be nostalgic about great Kohanim from the past. A person can bring the Bikurim and think, I wish I could be bringing my Bikurim and presenting them, for example, to Aharon when he was alive, or to one of Aharon's sons, or to any of the previous Kohanim that were alive in previous generations. Rather, a person should understand, accept, and appreciate that they bring the Bikurim to the Kohanim who are in their generation, and they should respect and show the same reverence and respect that they would if this Kohen was one of the Kohanim from a previous generation. So the Zera Shimshon asks, Kosher, this is difficult. Why would a person have any need in this particular situation for great men, great Kohanim of the past? That it would have made sense if we were talking about some kind of teaching role, if we were talking about going to the Kohen so the Kohen could teach the halacha, then that would have made sense that we're thinking about great men. Then it would have made sense for the Torah to say you have to accept the words of the Kohen who is in your generation, because we know a general rule, this rule comes from the Gemara in Maseches Rosh Hashanah, that says that Yiftach and his generation should be treated the same way that Shmuel was treated in his generation. Yiftach was a leader who had a very checkered past, or let's just say there were lots of problems and concerns about his leadership. But the Gemara teaches us, based on a pasuk, that the people in Yiftach's generation, the people alive then, were required to treat their leader Yiftach with the same respect that people treated one of the great leaders in the entire history of the Jewish people, Shmuel HaNavi, when he was alive in his generation. So that we would understand. If the Kohen had a significant role in the bringing of the Bikurim and that whole mitzvah of teaching about it or some other significant role, we would understand it. Aval kan hakohen ein lo ki'im lekabel hadoron. But here in Bikurim, apparently the only role that the Kohen has is to accept the gift of the fruit. Basically, the Kohen stands in the Beis HaMikdash or the Mishkan. People bring, they have a long line of people coming from all over the country bringing their Bikurim. They present it to the Kohen. They make, there's a special declaration that they make. And that seemingly, that's it. So why would it matter to a person if they have one of the greatest spiritual Kohanim of all time, or if they have the Kohen in their generation? Either way, it doesn't seem to be significant. And this question is also one that is dealt with by the Ramban in his commentary on the Torah. The Ode, and more, a second question on the commentary of Rashi, when the Torah says V'amarta Elov, that's in the same pasuk. It says you should come to the Kohen V'amarta Elov, and you should say to him. So Rashi comments She'eincha kafoi tova, that you are not ungrateful. You should say to the Kohen, I am not ungrateful. Matzorach sheyomar zeh. The Zera Shimshon says, what is the need for the person to say this? V'halo ma'asav mochechin alav shehu maybe bikurim. His actions in bringing bikurim prove the fact that he's grateful. That's the whole point of his bringing bikurim, to say, thank you Hashem for blessing me with this produce, for blessing me with these fruits. So why should he have to specifically mention to the Kohen when he brings the fruit that he is not an ingrate, that he is not lack gratitude? V'yesh lomar dechada metoretzes b'yerech chaverta. We can say that if we answer the first question, then we can also use the same answer to understand and to answer the second question. Lefi sheha-mitzvah hi sheha-kohen meniach es yodo tachas yad habalim umenif. The Kohen does have an active role here in Bikurim. He places his hand under the hand of the owner of the fruit, umenif, and together they wave the fruit. That's part of the ceremony for the Kohen to go to each person who's bringing a basket of Bikurim, of first fruits, to place his hands under the hands of the person and together to wave the fruit around. The Iker HaTanufa, and the main component of this waving, he lechavein, is to have in mind lots or ruchos ra'os, to daven to Hashem, to stop, to prevent strong winds or bad winds, detrimental winds, u'geshamim v'talalim ra'im, and rain and bad dew that would be injurious, that would be harmful to the fruit. So that's what the Kohen has in mind. And because of this role of the Kohen of davening and having in mind to pray to Hashem to now while the fruit is growing, to not have bad weather, that's why the Torah says, that's according to Rashi, that's why the Torah says you have to realize you only have the Kohen in your time. Klomar, which means to say, ein lecha lachsho v'lomar, each person should not think in his mind and say, v'chi hakohen hazeh choshuv v'ro'oi, is this Kohen that I'm bringing my Bikurim to really important enough and appropriate and holy enough, latzor, to prevent the bad weather, v'chule, etc., b'kavanas tfilaso, with the intention that he has in his davening. But you must realize that you only have the Kohen who is in your time. So whether or not that person is a great spiritual leader and you have complete confidence in his davening power, or whether or not it's less so, or you don't know and you're doubtful, the Torah emphasizes, don't think about that. Come with confidence in the Kohen in your day, that he will have the right kavanot, he will daven, and Hashem will make sure, and Hashem will listen to those prayers, and the weather will be good for your produce. V'hatam, and the reason why the Torah is saying this, hu ki Hashem yireh leleva. It is because Hashem looks to the heart. That phrase comes from a pasuk in Sefer Shmuel when Hashem sent Shmuel to pick David HaMelech, to select David HaMelech, to anoint him as the king over Bnei Israel. And David HaMelech was very young at the time and very not impressive. And so the pasuk says, Ki Hashem yira l'leva. Hashem doesn't look at the physical stature or the physical characteristics of a person. He looks at the heart of a person. The ilav the libo pone lemala b'yiras Hashem. And if it was not that this Kohen's heart was turned heavenwards with fear of Hashem, lo haya ola l'gedula. He would not have been allowed to rise up to greatness and to his position in the service in the Beis HaMikdash. The Ode, and in addition to this, in addition to the fact that we have to trust that Hashem is making sure that our Kohanim and our spiritual leaders are appropriate, in addition, Sheba'asiyas HaMitzvah, when we do a mitzvah, Hashefa Mispashet Ba'olam, the benefit of that mitzvah, the blessing of that mitzvah spreads throughout the world, B'chesed Hashem, through the kindness of Hashem. Afim ha'osem mitzvah eno mechaven b'yichudim u'v'sodos. Even if the one doing the mitzvah does not have the highest level of concentration and focus on the yichudim and the sodos, the secrets and the mysteries and the unifications that can come when a mitzvah is done, that it's appropriate to think about on the highest level when a mitzvah is done. So even if a person, even if the Kohen in this case isn't knowledgeable of some of those things and doesn't have those things in mind, nonetheless, Hashem makes sure that the benefits of the mitzvah, the shefa, and the blessings of the mitzvah will spread. So that's the answer. Let's pause for a moment. That's the answer to the first question. Again, let's recap briefly. The Zera Shimshon's question was, why did Rashi make a point of saying that when we bring Bikurim, when a person brings Bikurim, they should be very appreciative of the Kohen in their time and not wish and be nostalgic about previous Kohanim. After all, the Kohen hardly does anything. He just stands there and accepts the fruit. Zera Shimshon answers, no, that's not true. That's a mistake. Actually, the Kohen plays a vital role. The Kohen puts his hands under the hands of each a person who brings Bikurim, and together they wave the fruit and they daven together that the weather will now be good, that Hashem will bless everyone with good weather throughout Eretz Yisrael so that the fruits will grow, continue to grow and thrive. And therefore, it's this Kohen's kavanah and his davening and his spiritual connection to Hashem becomes very important. And that's what the Torah is emphasizing that we should keep in mind. Now let's go to the second part of the Rashi. Ve'amarta elov, and then it said, and you should say to him, she'encha kofoi tova, that you are not lacking in gratitude. What does that refer to? Shehine elu haruchos ra'os v'taloyim ro'im, rov chachmei ateva omrim, shehem boim me'ashiva kochvei leches, u'mehashtem esrei mazolos. The bad weather that might damage the fruit, most of the scientists and the people who focus on natural processes will say that weather is controlled by the planets and the spheres and the constellations of the stars, and that's what determines the weather. V'shema yomar ha'adam, and therefore perhaps a person will say, Masha nisparachti b'sadai u'v'karmai, the fact that I had blessings in my fields and in my vineyards, b'shana hazu, in this particular year, that doesn't have anything to do with the prayer that the Kohen said when I brought Bikurim. Rather, it's based on the constellations and the stars and the natural processes of meteorology. His hiru. Therefore, the Torah warns the amarta elov, and you should say to the Kohen, dafka she'eincha kafoi tova, that you are not lacking in appreciation of his vital role in davening and having the right kavanah to pray to Hashem that the weather will be good and beneficial for the fruit. So we see how the one answer, the one yesod that the Zera Shimshon explained to us, the one principle that he explained to us about the vital role of the Kohen during the Bikurim process answers both questions. It helps us understand why we need to appreciate whoever the Kohen is when we go to that person, and also why Rashi says that we must make it clear to the Kohen that we appreciate. We're not kafoi tov. We're not lacking in gratitude for his role. We don't view this as just a natural process. We thank Hashem and we thank the Kohen for davening to Hashem to help us and to help the weather be beneficial rather than being destructive. That is section 2, Os Beis, and now we move to a different topic in section Hey, section 5, Os Hey. Okay, here the Zera Shimshon is going to assume that we have certain pieces of information in our heads when we begin to study this piece. So we're going to now take a look at a couple of psukim so that we understand what the Zera Shimshon talks about, because he jumps right into a Gemara in Masechta Shabbos without telling us the things we need to know to understand it, and because he assumes we know it. So let's discuss that. First of all, in our Parsha of Ki Tavo, the very unusual and important ceremony is described later in the Parsha. And that has to do with the time period, looking ahead to the time period when Bnei Yisrael enters the land. This, of course, only takes place after Moshe dies and after the Torah is concluded. It takes place during the time of Yehoshua's leadership, and it's talked about in Sefer Yehoshua. But the Torah tells us now, Hashem says now, what describes the ceremony that we're supposed to do, that Bnei Yisrael is supposed to do at that time. And that ceremony involves two mountains, Har Eval and Har Gerizim. And what happens is, after Bnei Yisrael goes into the land, as quickly as they can, they're supposed to go to the location of these two mountains. They're supposed to split up into two major groups of 6 tribes in each group. 6 of the tribes are supposed to stand on Har Gerizim, and 6 of the tribes are supposed to stand on Har Eval. The Levium, the tribe of the Levium, stands in the middle of the two mountains, and they articulate, they announce 12 actions for which, if a person does them, they will be blessed, and 12 actions for which, if a person commits one of them, one of these transgressions, they will be cursed. And that's an important ceremony that unifies the people and takes place, is supposed to take place according to this mitzvah, the mitzvah that is described in our Parsha, after the Bnei Yisrael enters Eretz Yisrael. So what's important to note is that the Shevet Ruvain, the tribe of Ruvain, is one of the 6 tribes that is going to stand. It is told that they will stand on Har Eval, and they will be the ones who answer Amen when the curses are announced. The other 6 tribes who are on Har Gerizim, they will answer Amen when the blessings are announced by the Levium. So each of the groups of 6 tribes have a different role. And Reuven is part of the 6 tribes standing on Har Eval, who will answer Amen to the curses. One of the 12 curses is a curse on a person who has relations with his father's wife. And that means, that includes not only if that is the person's biological mother, but even if the father married a different woman. Let's say a man and a woman had a child, and then the man divorced his wife, the father divorced the wife, or the wife died, and the man married a second wife, or let's just say he had a second wife, as was allowed in the time of the Torah, to have more than one wife. However it is, if a man is married to a person's father, then that person is forbidden to have relations with that woman, the wife of his father, and there's a very powerful curse that is articulated at the time of this ceremony on such a person. So that's a very key piece of information. Now, in addition to that, the Zera Shimshon wants us to be aware and remember something that happened way back in Sefer Bereshit, and I'll read you the pasuk, which will be familiar to everyone. After the death of Rachel, after Yaakov and his family, his entire family is returning to Eretz Canaan from his years at Laban's home, Rachel dies, and then the Torah says as follows: Vayisa Yisrael vayeta halo mehala lemigdal eder. Yisrael traveled further and planted the tents a little past the place called Migdal Eder. Vayehi bishkon Yisrael ba'aretz hahi, and it was that when Yaakov or when Bnei Yisrael were dwelling in that place, Vayelech Reuven went, Vayishkav es Bilhah, and he lay with Bilhah, Pilegesh Aviv, his father's concubine, Vayishma Yisrael, and Yisrael heard of this. Then there's a break in the middle of the pasuk, and then it ends, Vayiyu v'nei Yaakov shneim asar. And the sons of Yaakov were 12, and then the next pasuk and the next two psukim, the Torah goes on, and it lists the 12 sons of Yaakov Avinu. So we have those two pieces of information. We have the curse pronounced on a man who sleeps with his father's wife. And then we have the story of Reuven, apparently the Torah telling us by Yishkav es Bilhah, that he slept with his father's wife, Bilhah, after Rachel died. And now let's go right to what the Zera Shimshon wants to teach us about this and how he puts this together. Shabbos Perek He, Masechet Shabbos in the 5th Perek. Tanya Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer. It was taught that Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, Mutzal oso tzadik me oso avo. That righteous man, this is referring to Reuven, was saved me oso avon, from that sin that the Torah apparently says he committed. So Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar wants to make it clear that Reuven never was guilty of having relations with Bilhah, even though the Torah seems to indicate that that's what he did. He says, no, he did not do that. The lo ba matzeh liyoda. And this action did not come to his hand, meaning he never participated in the action of having relations with Bilhah, his father's wife. Efshar osid zaro lamod al har eva. Is it possible that if he had committed the sin, that in the future his children, meaning the tribe of Reuven, would stand on Har Eva, the Lomar, and say the words, Aror Shochevim Eshes Aviv, cursed is the man who sleeps with his father's wife, and meanwhile Reuven had this sin and participated in this exact sin, etc. So in order to understand that Gemara, you need to know that the Gemara brings major machlokes as to whether or not Reuven actually had relations with Bilhah. According to one opinion in the Gemara Masechet Shabbos, he did, and according to a different school of thought, he did not. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, who the Zera Shimshon just quoted, clearly is of the latter school, that Reuven did not have relations with Bilhah, and he proves it from the event mentioned, the ceremony mentioned in our Parsha of Ki Tavo, in which in the future, Reuven will be one of the 6 tribes, as we said, to stand on Har Eval and answer Amen to the curses, one of which is a curse on a person who sleeps with his father's wife. And so Rav Shimon ben Elazar said there's no way that would be set up to take place if Reuven had committed this sin. So this sin was not committed. Just as an aside here, to understand this school of thought a little better, what they suggest, which Rav Shimon ben Elazar and other Tanaim suggest, is that what Reuven did do was he took his father's bed, which Yaakov Avinu used to put his bed in the tent of one of his 4 wives, wherever he would be spending the evening on a given night. And after Rachel died, Yaakov Avinu moved his bed into Bilhah's tent. And so Reuven felt that this was not appropriate, this was disrespectful, this was harmful and hurtful to his mother Leah. And so he took Yaakov's bed and his father's bed and physically moved it in from Bilhah's tent to Leah's tent. And this was viewed as such an act, an inappropriate act on his part, and such a disrespectful act to his father, Yaakov Avinu, that the Torah uses a phrase by Yishkav es Bilhah, that he lay with Bilhah, when really what it means, he got involved with the bed that was in Bilhah's tent, and he moved it in order to show what an inappropriate act this was. That is their explanation. Let's continue. Makshin. The question is asked, Lama eno mochiach de Reuven lo chata? Midover hamukta. Why did Reb Shimon ben Elazar not bring a proof that Reuven did not sin with Bilhah from something that happened earlier in the Torah? In other words, the question that's being asked is, we understand that Reb Shimon ben Elazar wants to prove that Reuven did not commit the sin with Bilhah, but why did he bring a proof from Parsha Ki Tavo, where it talks about an incident that's going to happen in the future of Bnei Israel after the Torah is concluded? Why couldn't he bring a much earlier proof from the Torah? Amru Sota, as it is said in Maseches Sota, at the time that Yosef, we're switching gears for a moment, we're talking about Yosef now, not Reuven. At the time that Yosef was in Egypt and he wanted to have relations with the wife of Potiphar, an image of his father appeared to him, and it said to him, Joseph, in the future, your brothers' names are going to be written down on the stones of the ephod, meaning the choshen, the breastplate that was attached to the ephod that the Kohen Gadol wore. So an image of Yaakov Avinu appeared to Yosef when he was wavering, when he wasn't sure he could stay true to the faith and not be with Potiphar's wife, who was doing everything she could to seduce him. And so the image of Yaakov Avinu said, in the future, all of your brothers' names will be listed on the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol. Do you wish for your name to be erased from among them? Meaning, do you wish to commit this sin and have the ramifications and the result of that be that your name, your stone will be blank. Your name will not appear on one of the 12 stones of the choshen, of the breastplate. V'hachanami name. And so too we could say regarding Reuven, she'ilu chata Reuven, hayasa'avno kehe, o hayanimche shemo misham. We could say, using that same logic, that if Yosef had sinned, his name would have been wiped off from the stone, his stone on the breastplate. We can say the same thing. If Reuven had sinned with Bilhah, then when the choshen was made, his name would not appear, or it would be in some way it would be lessened. Some of the letters would be missing. It would be weakened in some way. But that was not the case. We know that when the Torah describes the choshen, it specifically says that each of the names of the shvatim, of the 12 shvatim, were listed on the stones of the choshen connected to the ephod. So since Reuven's name appeared, according to this Gemara in Sota, that would seem to indicate that Reuven, and seem to prove that Reuven did not commit the Aveira with Bilhah. So again, let's make sure we're clear on the question, because it's kind of a reverse logic. The question is, why did Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar bring his proof from the incident of Har Grizim and Har Eval and the curse of the man who sleeps with his father? Why didn't he bring a proof from much earlier in the Torah, where we see Reuven's name was listed on the choshen along with all of his brothers, and it wasn't erased? And that means that he didn't commit the sin, just like Yosef was told that if he committed the sin, his name would be erased if he slept with Potiphar's wife. Since that didn't happen, Yosef's name, since he refrained from doing so, Yosef's name stayed on the stone, and so too we could say Reuven's name also stayed on his stone, and bring that to prove that he did not commit the sin. So the question is, why wasn't that brought by Reb Shimon ben Elazar? Let's continue. Moving to the next page, page Shin Sameches. Uladidan lo kasha klal. And according to our approach, this is no problem. De'ika lemeimar, because we can say, ulatamech, according to the reasoning behind your question, amai eino mochiach mipasuk hamuktam lakol. Why didn't we bring a proof that's earlier than all of these other proofs? Shetekef achar hamaseh, immediately after the pasuk seems to imply that Reuven was with Bilhah in an inappropriate way. The Torah writes, Vayiyu b'nei Yaakov shneim aser. Yaakov had 12 sons, and that indicates that they were equal in righteousness. Reuven was not left off the list. Reuven was not somehow said to be on a lower spiritual level than his brothers. And this is exactly the proof that is brought in that same Gemara in Masechta Shabbos by a different person, Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani. He brings that pasuk as a proof that Reuven never committed a sin of having relations with Bilhah. But what now we see we need to say is the Dilma avad teshuva. Perhaps Reuven did teshuva. In other words, the assumption that if Reuven had committed the sin, it would have resulted in him not being listed with his brothers back in the incident where it says, and Yaakov had 12 sons. And if that's the case, that would not be the case even if he committed the sin, because he might have done a tshuva gemura. He would have done such a full tshuva that's why he continued to be listed with them. As the Gemara says nearby in that same Gemara in Shabbos, Zazata hirtata parcha chet mimcha. The Zera Shimshon, that's a quote from the Gemara in Shabbos, and the Zera Shimshon interprets it to mean you trembled, you pulled back, and the chet flew away from you, meaning Reuven could have done the sin, but his powerful regret and his charata and his teshuva gemur, his full teshuva, would have made it so that the chet would be as if it never happened. So let's pause for a moment here before we go to the next paragraph. What the Zera Shimshon is saying is that any question that you might ask on Reb Shimon ben Elazar from these other places in the Chumash to possibly prove other ways of showing that Reuven did not sin with Bilhah, those proofs won't work. Why? Because possibly in those cases you could say Reuven did commit the chet with Bilhah, but he did teshuva, and he did such a teshuva gemura that Hashem forgave him, and therefore that's why he maintained his status. So whether or not you want to bring a proof from the fact that right after the pasuk about Bilhah, the Torah lists and says specifically there were 12 sons of Yaakov, and it lists all of them, and Reuven is included in the list. Whether you want to show from there and say, oh, that shows Reuven didn't sin, the answer is no. Reuven might have sinned, but his tshuva, his powerful, sincere tshuva could have brought him back to the level of being listed. Or whether or not you want to bring a proof from the ephod that his name appeared on the ephod, that's also not a sufficient proof, because possibly Reuven could have sinned with Bilhah, but again, done such a powerful teshuvah that his name was allowed to appear on the breastplate, on the choshen. And let's see let's continue inside to see how this relates to the proof that was actually brought about the ceremony on Har Eval. So too, we now see that you can't bring a proof from the stones of the ephod. Perhaps after he sinned, perhaps Reuven did do the sin, but then he repented. Then his kabla b'tshuvaso, and his tshuva was accepted by Hashem. And because of this, his name was not erased from his stone. Omnum, however, and here is the critical point, Mehar Eval Shapir Maisi Raya. From this ceremony on Har Eval, it is correct for us to bring a proof. She'im ha'emesh shechata, because if Reuven had sinned, lo hayagozer hakadosh baruch hu sheyu bonav min ha'mekalalin. Hashem would not have decreed that his children, the tribe of Reuven, should be on the mountain where the curses were recited. Kapirish Rashi Sham, as Rashi explains there. And the Afal Pisha Asa Tshuva, and even if he had done Tshuva after sinning, even so, it would have been a reminder of the original sin he did, Ma'asav Harishonim, from his original actions. So the Zera Shimshon, it's very important that we understand what he's saying. He's saying the other proofs that were suggested would not have worked, because the fact that Reuven could have done tshuva knocks those proofs out. We no longer have a proof from those two cases that Reuven didn't commit a sin. But if Reuven had committed the sin, then Hashem never would have said that in the ceremony on Har Eval and Har Gerizim, the tribe of Reuven should stand on Har Eval, because it would have been inappropriate for the descendants of Reuven to stand on the mountain and say Amen to the curse about a man, about a person who has relations with his father's wife, because this would have been a reminder to Reuven's original sin. And this would have applied even if Reuven did teshuvah. As we know, the halacha is, if a person commits a sin and then they do teshuvah gemura, there's an actual prohibition of mentioning the avera to them. We don't mention a person's previous averas to them after they've done teshuvah. So too with a ger, with a convert, we don't mention the fact that the person once lived as a non-Jew and wasn't part of the Jewish people to them after they successfully convert. So therefore, Zera Shimshon says Hashem never would have arranged for the tribe of Reuven to be on Har Eval. Hashem, if Reuven had sinned with Bilhah, then Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar in the Gemara's point is, then Hashem would have arranged for the tribe of Reuven to be on Har Gerizim, on the other mountain, and they would have answered Amen to the blessings. They would not have had to answer Amen to the curse that would have been reminiscent about the sin that Reuven did. Therefore, it proves, it's a solid proof, according to this school of thought in the Gemara, that Reuven did not commit the sin with Bilhah. At this point, the Zera Shimshon has answered his question, but in his last two paragraphs, he wants to raise a very fascinating question, which is, why did why did Hashem arrange, why was it arranged that the image of Yaakov Avinu appeared to Yosef to help him refrain from sinning, but this did not occur for Reuven to help him refrain from possibly sinning with Bilhah? Why don't we have a tradition that says that the same thing happened with Reuven? So let's continue, and which is a new question and a new point. Let's continue in these last two paragraphs. But now we have a new question on what the image of Yaakov Avinu said to Yosef. Your brothers in the future will name, their names will be written on the breastplate. Do you want that your name will be erased from amongst them? Meaning, do you really want to commit this sin with Potiphar's wife and have your name erased from the breastplate? Now we can ask that possibly Yosef's name would not have been erased. Because maybe Yosef could have committed the sin and then afterwards do a tshuva, the Yiskabel Afu, and he would have been accepted, just like we said, had Reuven sinned with Bilhah and done a complete tshuva, he would have been accepted. The im tomar, and if you say and if you say yes, it's possible that he would have done a full tshuva, but perhaps Yosef would not have merited to do such a complete tshuva if he had committed the sin with Potiphar's wife. Obviously, hypothetically, we know the Torah tells us he did not commit the sin with Potiphar's wife. Or perhaps we did not want to have a case where Yosef would look like someone who says, I'm going to intentionally commit a sin, and then I will repent, and therefore I'll spare myself any punishment, any consequences, which we know is not acceptable to Hashem. If a person consciously says, I'm going to commit a sin, b'mezin, on purpose, and then I'll just do tshuva to make sure I kind of get out of it to escape punishment, that's not accepted by Hashem. That's not considered a sincere teshuvah. In Cain, kosher lama min hashamayim chosu al Yosef. If so, the real question becomes, why from Shamayim did they take pity on Yosef shelo yechte in order to help him refrain from sinning? V'sholchu oso hediyukan kedei leturdo. And they sent the image of Yaakov to him to appear to him in order to burden him, lahafrisho min hachet, and to separate him from the sin. V'lo kach asu l'Reuven, but this was not done in the case of Reuven, l'turdo, to burden him with the image of his father's appearance, shelo yechte, that he shouldn't sin. This didn't happen for Reuven, but it did happen for Yosef. Why? The last paragraph. V'yesh lomar dehachet shel Yosef hayachet yoser gadol. We can say that the sin of Yosef, of possibly sleeping with Potiphar's wife, was a greater sin, would have been a greater sin than the possible sin of Ruvain being with Bilhah. She'ein lo tikkun kol kach maher. That even if Yosef would have done tshuva, if he had slept with Potiphar's wife, it would not have been easy to repair this sin. As we say in the first parak of Maseches Eruvin, shelakol haposhim otzi Avram u'makabelahu. For all sinners, all Jewish people who sin, when they pass from this world and they go to Gehenna, Abraham immediately comes, according to the Gemara in Eruvin, u'makabelahu, and he accepts them, meaning he takes them from Gehenna, he brings them out of Gehenna. Levar mi Yisrael haba al hanochris, except for a Jew who committed the sin of having relations with a non-Jewish woman. Delo mevashkarle, because Abraham does not recognize such a person. When Abraham comes to Gehenna, according to this Gemara, and he looks for Jewish people to save from Gehenna, he doesn't recognize a person who committed such a sin. And against Abraham's will, this man needs to spend at least some time in Gehenna. As the Rif and the Tosfos explain on that Gemara, the Ayin Sham, and you can look there. So the answer to the second question, the new question that the Zera Shimshon posed, is that Ruvain was left, so to speak, on his own in the incident with Bilhah, because even had he committed the sin with Bilhah, which again, to be clear, we know there's a strong school of thought in the Gemara that says he did not, but even according to those Tanoim and Amoraim who say he did commit the sin with Bilhah, he could do tshuva gemura, he could do a full and complete tshuva, and that would be completely accepted. However, by Yosef, the Zera Shimshon says, based on the Gemara in Eruvin, if he had committed the sin with Potiphar's wife because it involved an idolatrous woman, even Avram Avinu would not have been able to save him from Gehenna, and his sin would have been considered of a more serious nature. And therefore, the Yukno Shel Aviv, the image of his father, came to him and was sent to him by Shemayim to help him stop from doing such a sin. May we be all Zoche, Mir Hashem, God willing, to have the strength on our own and have the help from Shemayim to be prevented from sins, especially during this time of Chodesh Elul. Yashar Koach to everyone.